See my beauty blender. This is Moldy. I call it the Freckle Beauty Blender. And this is Torn, and I call it the Talking Beauty Blender. Hello dears, welcome to Beauty with a Heart. I'm Lily, also known as Lulu. As you dears see, I haven't applied any eyeshadow because later I will be recording this palette review. Finally! So I'll be creating an eye makeup look later. So my topic today is my problem with the Sponge Beauty Blender. So sad. And Sponge Beauty Blender versus the Silicone Beauty Blender. So let's get started. I've started using Beauty Sponge Blender in the year 2015, which is 3 years ago. I was watching a lot of Pony makeup videos. She is a very famous Korean makeup artist, and she is totally in love with this sponge blender from Daiso. I couldn't find this at Daiso, but I found a similar one in a random beauty shop, which is around only 3 Sing dollar. I'm not sure is this exactly the same as what she was using from Daiso, but I got this and this served me very well. I've used it for about more than 1 year or 1.5 years, and I always like to dampen it with water before using the makeup. When I finish my makeup, I will squeeze out as much water as possible and let it air dry by itself. It doesn't give me any problem, it doesn't give me any moles. So far, it's good. It's just that after about 1.5 years, it starts to flick off due to wear and tear, which is very normal. Later on, I bought this, and it's a tragic. I gave one to my neighbor, and now I've only left one. This sponge is the first sponge, and I've used it for only less than a month, and it becomes moldy. So sad. I did a video before, so I will link it over here in the screen and link it in the description box. Same thing, I dampen it with water, and then after applying makeup, I squeeze it as dry as possible to remove the excess water and let it air dry by itself. So I'm not sure is it because of my weather here, which is hot and humid, things doesn't get dry so easily. And before it got dry, I wet it again. I am really not sure is it because of that, that's why there's mold over here. So the lesson I learned from this first sponge blender is I must let it dry totally before I soak it with water again. And this is the second sponge blender. Learning from the first experience, I made sure I squeeze out as much water as possible and microwave it to let it dry for 1 minute. I've used this for only about a week and it's damaged. So sad. I microwave it every day and there's some stretch marks formed. I didn't give it too much tops. Now I realize what is going on. So on the 7th day of using, I wash it. And as you dears know, when it's soaked with lots of water and when you wash it, it's very wet. So again, I squeeze out as much water as possible and microwave it for 1 minute. I remove from the microwave oven and let it air dry for about 1 or 2 hours time and then microwave it again for another minute. I remove this sponge blender again from the microwave oven for also another 1 or 2 hours, and then I was thinking because it's still very wet, so why not test it out with microwaving it for 2 minutes straight. And that's it. When I remove it from the microwave oven after 2 minutes, it becomes hollow. And as you guys can see, it's empty inside. It's melting. So I'm very sad, but I still want to use it so as not to waste it. So the next day, I apply it as usual and find that there is a crack. Okay, it's actually not a crack, it's torn. And when I squeeze it, the tear becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So now it's talking, it's able to talk now. So there goes my sponge blender in a week's time. So currently, I'm using this Sponge Beauty Blender from AliExpress. It's only about slightly over $1 USD. because I was thinking, since the sponge blender gives me so many problems, I'm not willing to invest in an expensive sponge because given the nature of a sponge, this is my guess, it will become moldy if it's not dry entirely, and it may also get hollow if it's too dry. And so far, it doesn't give me any problems. But I guess this is the dupe for the Pony's sponge blender. But it doesn't give me any problems. I use it for over a month from now. And I also do the same thing. Wet it, and in fact this is wet right now. Wet it, use it, and air dry it. And the next morning, I wet it again, apply makeup, and air dry it again. So the routine repeats. And it doesn't give me any problems now. No moldiness, no hollow. I didn't even microwave it. So far, so good. I find that the sponge blender is very difficult to maintain. I seriously don't know what goes wrong. What did I do wrong? So I bought this silicone blender from AliExpress. This is very squishy. When I received it, I was squishing it and play around with it, and then this is what happens. But I don't mind because I'm just using this sharp tip over here to blend around the eye area, especially at the inner corner. I find that this is very good for blending over here. The only issue is the glitters fall all over my face, but I don't find it a problem because I can use my finger to just grab away the glitter. And for the face, I'm using this. And see how beautiful is the flower! This sponge blender is a bit hard and stiff, but it blends quite alright on my skin because I'm just using tapping action. I find that blending with silicone blender, it will take more time, but it really saves the amount of the liquid foundation and concealer used. And after that, I've got this from Charie. It's a free gift from her when I bought her palette. And I'm not sure, is it just me? There is a jasmine smell. Very nice. Very nice. So I'm surprised that after comparing, this is actually softer and easily blendable than this. So again, I will just use tapping action to tap around and spread around the foundation. So this is my problems with my beauty sponge blenders. I did a video before, and from the comments from my viewers, they have the same issue that their beauty blenders are moldy. And I'm not sure whether you dears have this same issue of getting hollow. So please comment in the comment section, or if you know what I'm doing wrong, please tell me. Thank you very much. So next, I'm going to blend the liquid foundation and concealer using both the beauty sponge blender and the silicone sponge blender. This is my bare face. I haven't applied any makeup, just skincare and sunscreen. So I'll be testing with this Catrice HD Coverage. Catrice HD Liquid Coverage Foundation, and see if there's any difference between this and this. I've watched a lot of videos stating that the silicone beauty blender can't really spread out those very thick coverage foundation. I'm not a foundation person, so I have very limited foundation. So this is my thickest texture foundation, so I just like to test it out. So let me demo the texture first so that you dears can see. It's very runny, as you can see. Use my finger to blend first. It gives full coverage and it blends easily by itself. So the testing begins now! Applying this foundation on the left side of my face, which is your right, with the silicone beauty blender. This is the wet beauty blender. I'm not sure, is it because of the nature of the sponge? It's very absorbent. I have this theory, which I'm not sure if I'm right, because it absorbs the liquid foundation and the products. That's why the skin seems to absorb the liquid foundation or any fluid much better. Really, my camera can pick this up. From the camera, the skin seems to absorb the foundation very well. It's like a second skin layer. zooming out, can you see there's a glow here? Alright, next I'm using this silicone blender to apply foundation on this side of the face, which is on my right and is your left. Usually I will use the tapping method to spread the foundation around with the silicone beauty blender. Yeah. Again, my theory is, I'm not sure, is it because of the nature of the silicone material, it doesn't absorb the foundation or those liquid makeup products, it just push around the products. And that's why the common feedback with the silicone blender is it doesn't blend the products very well. I'm not sure if you guys can see from the camera, but in the mirror, this side of the face with the silicone blender, the foundation still lies on the surface of the skin, and over here I have lines here. The lines is very obvious, and there's a dent this area. And because it doesn't really blend well, as well as the sponge blender, I will have to use more time to spread the liquid foundation around. On the camera, I think you just can only see that this patch is very glowy, but in the mirror it's very different. Foundation still lies on top of the skin without absorbing it. Not sure if this camera can pick up the difference. On this side of the face, which I'm using the sponge blender, is more dewy, more glowy, and it's more evenly distributed, smoother. On this side of the face, with this silicone blender, the foundation is like still can't absorb into the skin and it's more mattified. I'm not sure is it because of my lighting as well, but this side here seems more mattified, this side is more glowy. And this side here, you can see more clog pores, you can see the flaws surfacing out, protruding out more obviously. Next, I'm going to test out with this Catrice concealer. Okay, just show you the texture first. This is thick in texture and yet fluid, easily blendable. Again, I will use the same amount of both sides of the face to be fair. But as you dears know, silicone beauty blender, it requires lesser amount because it doesn't absorb the products. So again, I will use this sponge blender on the left side of the face, which is your right, and this silicone beauty blender on my right side of the face, which is your left. So I'm going to start using this first. There's no sharp tip for this blender, so I find that it's not very suitable to apply and blend within the eye area. Even for this area, which is more narrow, I find that it still can't really blend the inner corner part. Again, with the sponge blender, the concealer absorbs into the skin very well. And next, I'm using this silicone blender. I love the sharp tip of this one because it can help me to blend easier on the inner corner of the eyes. And sometimes I will just move like this to spread out more evenly. And as you guys may see, this area here, It just push the concealer around and spread it around. Actually, in the beginning, I no need to apply that much concealer on this eyes because silicone really doesn't absorb the products. The only bad thing or not so good things about this blender is the glitter falls all over my face, which can be quite irritating. And I have to scrape out these glitters with my finger. Okay, comparing these two eyes, the silicone blender part, the concealer creases a bit and sinking into my fine lines over here because I used too much amount. So yes, you really can save the concealer amount or the liquid foundation when you apply with the silicone blender. And it's much thicker than this side with the sponge blender. So you dears can see that this side here is thicker and this side here the product is more absorbed. So in terms of blending, the sponge blender blends better. For the silicone blender, again, you no need to use so much amount, and that is the issue I have now because I apply the equal amount on both sides so as to be fair. But if I were to use lesser amount, then most likely I will have this effect as well on the side which I use the sponge blender. But now it's like it's creasing around and you can see lines and bumps over here because I think I used too much concealer. So for blending wise, the sponge blender is still better. So there's the comparison between the sponge blender and silicone blender is, in terms of blending, the sponge is better. In terms of cleaning, silicone blender is much easier to clean. In terms of maintenance, of course silicone is better. It dries up very fast, so I don't think there will be a moldy issue. In terms of the amount of liquid foundation or concealer used, the sponge beauty blender will require more amount and silicone blender will require lesser amount and help you to save more. So yes, it really depends on what we are looking for. Nowadays, I'm using both the beauty sponge blender and also the silicone blender together. I've watched this method from Charie Claris. I will link her video in the description box. She's the one who discovered this method. Firstly, she will use this silicone blender to blend the liquid foundations around first because this helps to save the amount of the liquid foundation and concealer. Then after that, she will follow by this, the sponge beauty blender, to blend it out more evenly and more beautifully. So her intention is to save the amount of the products used. But for myself, because I'm not a foundation person, I don't think I will ever finish a liquid foundation. So saving to me is not an issue, it's more of the blending part. I also use this method because I find that the sponge blender is really easier to blend. For myself, my conclusion is, currently I don't think I will invest in an expensive sponge blender because I've mentioned just now, I think it will also get moldy if not taken care of properly. And I'm not sure, it seems like my $1 or $3 sponge blender is performing much better than my Real Techniques sponge. I don't know why. So I find it there's no point for me to use the expensive sponge blender. So that's all for my sharing today. I hope that this video can help you dears to select whether you use a sponge beauty blender or a silicone or both. Last but not least, here's an inner beauty tip for us to be more beautiful and more wise. Live with think hope. Believe that there will be better tomorrow. And yes, if you find this video useful, remember to help me to like this video, comment, subscribe, and click the bell notification button for my future videos. Thank you very much. May you dears have a peaceful, blissful, and joyful week ahead. See you next time. Bye!